Hello friends, this is Reflections, a religious affairs program sponsored by Paducah Cooperative Ministry, where together we do God's work with human hands. I'm Karen Winkel. I pastor United Church of Paducah here in Paducah, and I'm one of the co-hosts of the program, but today I'm the only host. Gregory's away today, but he's with us in spirit, and we're so glad that you're here. It's an exciting program today and an important one, and a program today that will give you a glimpse into a world that many of us are not familiar with, and that is ministry within jails and prisons. And we have with us today from Lifeline Ministry, Charlie Baker and Kevin Wissing, and they're here to share with us about the way in which God is using them to minister to those who often are overlooked and forgotten, and even the subject of scorn. People might want to stay away, and yet you've drawn close. So welcome today, and
Thank you.
Charlie and Kevin, and just share with our viewers just a little bit about yourself, just as a regular Joe, and then we'll talk about your ministries.
Well, I'm Charlie Baker, and I've been in church since 1945. I got saved, and I was just a nominal Christian. I just did the works in the church. I was in church government for 21 years, and I just mainly did all my work in the church. And then finally, I just realized that there was a lot of work outside of the church, and strangely, I was invited to go to Eddyville State Penitentiary, which is a maximum security in the state of Kentucky up here at Eddyville. And I went, and of course, once I went through the doors, I was wondering, as the big doors clanged behind me, I was wondering what I was doing there. But in prison ministry, you find that when men's minds really clear up and they get control of themselves, they come back down to earth, and they really like for you to come. I was just sharing this morning about a little boy about 23 years old one night. I shared with him for quite a while and shared a salvation story. And then he wanted to sing, and we sang some old hymns together, and we just had a good time together. And he said, when I started to leave, he said, Charlie said, if I ever decide to get saved, I'm going to call you. So it's a real rewarding experience. It's something that you can go away knowing that you've sown a seed on good ground. I've sown a lot of seeds. One thing that comes to my mind when it talks about sowing seed, I met a 74-year-old man one night, Herman Sears, and he said, I'm Herman Sears. I've been in the penal system 45 years. Said, I've had cancer twice and open heart surgery. And I said, well, you must be a Christian. God's been taking care of you. He says, no. I said, well, then God is long-suffering, Herman. The reason he spared you these 70 years, 45 in the penal system, is he wants you saved. But I shared with him all night long, and I never did leave the prison, but I sowed seed with him that night. And I didn't go back the next Saturday night to Cell House 3 at Eddyville, but I went back the next, and the chaplain said, before we went up in Cell House 3, he said, Baker and Benjamin came last Saturday night a week ago and shared the gospel with Herman Sears. But I told him when I left there we were going to be praying for him night and day until the Spirit of God came in there and saved him. He said Herman Sears got saved. Well, Herman Sears, I never did know, but 2 weeks later he got shipped to LaGrange, where the hospital is, state hospital. And 3 weeks later they put him out on Potter's Hill, and I tell people he beat hell by 5 weeks. So that's a pretty rewarding thing for prison ministry, and there's always room for a lot of other guys to come in, you know, on prison ministry.
Kevin, just introduce our viewers to your story just a little bit, and we'll go deeper with this ministry.
Well, my name is Kevin Wissing, and I've always been a churchgoer since I was a kid. I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I've always gone to church. As I grew, I continued going to church, and I lived in Arizona for a while, and became a member of a nice church down there, Genesis Open Bible Fellowship, and we did a lot of out-of-state and out-of-country activities. And one in particular was we went to a women's prison in Rio Rancho, Mexico. Went down there with the church. We're going to remodel the church. We're going to do it for a weekend. And it was different, really different. It was a humbling experience as well. We built bunks, not just the ones you take out of the package and screw together. We cut the wood and built the bunks and painted all the jail cells and put on a play for them, and they put on a play for us. And then we did baptismals. And after the final call for baptismals, I went up and tugged on the pastor's sleeve and said, I want to be baptized. And I was baptized in the women's prison in Mexico. Mm. And I guess that's where things really started to turn around for me in my life. God really opened up doors for me, and I opened up, the main important door I opened up for him was the door to my heart, and let him in, and accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior. And was working miracles in my life that I could actually see and feel, and just amazing. And I came to Kentucky and got myself in trouble and went to jail. And I met Charlie. Charlie and Paducah Lifeline Ministries came in, and they were doing going to do a class Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 2, and I signed up for that class. And I know God wanted me to have that class because most of the time, from other inmates I was talking to, the waiting list was long. But for that particular class, I was number 3 on the list, so I know that's where I needed to be. And I met Charlie and became introduced to Paducah Lifeline Ministries. And the classes that they teach in the jail are very rewarding, very interesting classes. It's just amazing. And when I got out of jail, I went to Paducah Lifeline Ministries. And that Paducah Lifeline Ministries just really turned my life around.
Wonderful. Well, how important it is, I think, in your ministry that you have lived experience that then God can use as God uses you with others. If I'm understanding, there's a ministry within the jail setting or prison setting, and then also Lifeline has programs outside. Talk a little bit about the inside and the outside.
Well, the Paducah Community Center, which we call the halfway house, these are men that has 18 months or less in the penitentiary. We have a ministry in there. We have a ministry in McCracken County Jail. We minister and share Lifeline courses everywhere that the door opens, and the door is opening up more every day. And so that's our outreach from Lifeline Ministries. Of course, what really does us good and is like Kevin, and some of those guys really have a calling on their life. And recently we've had some guys that come up to me and said, you know, I feel God calling me to a youth ministry. He says, I got into this when I was 14 years old, and somebody needs to go warn the 14-year-olds. And like you said a while ago, you've been into this, so you know how to handle it. So, but we have a lot of guys that really have callings on their life. And when Kevin was in jail with me, or we were in jail together, he had a calling on his life, and he still got a calling on his life. And recently he just came in from Louisville, and he is really seeking to get into the jail ministry. And so we're going to try to tie him in through Lifeline, that he can go into McCracken County Jail and Paducah Community service place down here in different places and teach the program. We have an ad. We're trying to get people to come out there and do one-on-ones, to where you and I would just sit down and you'd say, Charlie, how's your week going? And I could pour my heart out to you. And one-on-ones, we have teaching. We need teachers, and we need people to come out there and do various chores at Lifeline. So we're trying to recruit people all the time. But I always count it a real blessing to use someone that's gone through the program and someone who's been there. Now, I never was into anything like that, and sometimes I wonder why God would choose me to get into prison and jail ministry. But I find that they're just regular people like me. And I told some of them here a while back, I said, I don't understand how you could even be incarcerated. They're real polite. They're always thanking me for any little thing I do, and they're good workers. And one of them told me one time, said, Mr. Baker, said, you're looking at the real man, but said, you let me drink a little or smoke a little crack and I go to an animal real quick. But you know, in the prisons, they don't get this. So prisons and jails, so their mind's real clear. And then you can just go in there and talk about the love of Christ. And they're real easy. They're easy to come to the Lord. They're a lot easier than people that's outside, because they've been down there and they know what their need is, and they're ready to accept it.
Yeah, they're in a sense they're undefended, because in our ordinary lives we have so many things that kind of act as a cushion, and so there it's almost like kind of in the studio the spotlight's on them a little bit, and so yeah. Well, what would you think would be the biggest surprise for you when you got started? I mean, because I'm thinking, you know, folks that haven't had any experience, you know, ever have any need to visit someone in jail or in prison, or, you know, all most of us know what's on television or in the movies. What for you was the biggest surprise as your ministry began?
Well, I think the biggest surprise is just like coming here. I come here expecting something, you know, it's out of the ordinary, and but it's just really down to earth stuff. It's everyday living. And I think that what I was really expecting, that I had to go through a lot of training, that I had to know this and had to know that. But really all you got to know is just to have the experience of Christ's love in you, because that's all they allow you to share anyway. And you know, of course, I use spiritual law number one a lot of times, that God loves you and has a wonderful plan for your life, regardless of who you are. Because you take Saul, who later became the Apostle Paul, he was very religious, but still yet he was on the wrong track. Well, after getting saved, he became a real man, you know. Or John Bunyan, who wrote Amazing Grace, or A Pilgrim's Progress, and then John Newton, who wrote Amazing Grace. You know, those guys were really down there. There was probably no one ever now. The one that wrote Amazing Grace, you know, he was actually caged, and he was actually like an animal. And he came from there to becoming a preacher, and so he's buried under his church house over in England right now. But I find that I think the really surprise in my life is that God really does love these men, and God wants to use them. And it's so easy for me to go in there just to tell them that God loves you and He has a plan for your life, and all He wants you to do is just to look up and call on His name, you know. And it really surprised me just how easy they are to come to Christ. I had never really, in all my life in church, and I guess I was in church, I guess, 23, 4, 5 years before I even thought about winning souls, or even thought about doing anything like this. And I stand amazed, you know, that how God could take me and get me into this. And sometimes I pinch myself and says, this is really me, and what am I doing in here? But I know that that's my calling in life.
And I mean, it's clear that it gives you a lot of energy, a lot of joy.
Amen.
That you have passion for that, and that's always an indicator of ministry.
Right.
Well, Kevin, what was it like for you to connect with Charlie and be the object of his care and concern?
One of the best experiences of my life. And I told Charlie that. I said, God has put you in my life. You have given me hope and inspiration. And when I was just at my worst, you know, I hit bottom, and I was hurting. And Charlie and the Lifeline class came along, and Charlie just changed my whole outlook on things. Just gave me the hope and inspiration, and made me want to pick up the Bible again. Just really had a meaningful part of my life, and I will never forget him for it. And I just praise the Lord that I had that experience. I thank God that I had that experience. I was at my worst. I did hit bottom, but I had to. I myself, I had to turn my life around. And I'm just glad that Charlie's in my life, and I'm glad that God put him in my life.
Talk about
and I know I can relate to other guys that are, that are in the jail, because I've been there, and to try to make that be a turning point for them would be just rewarding, and something I want to do.
So talk about the class or classes. What was the class that Charlie was teaching?
We tapped into several different aspects. Fruit of the Spirit, one in particular that stands out for me.
So there are classes that center around Scripture?
Stepping into freedom.
Yes, stepping into freedom.
Spiritual adultery, and we have a variety of classes, and it's.
Fruit of the Spirit was my
But
favorite.
the classes that we teach, we like perspective and stepping into freedom, and then we have some smaller books like the Fruits of the Spirit and stuff like that we teach.
So a class would last how long?
12 weeks. And after which time we give them a certificate, just like we give them out here, that they passed it. Of course, now, the beautiful part of the guys going through these Lifeline classes is that the courts, Judge Hines and Judge Clymer, and the courts down here in McCracken County, they honor this. Now I went to court one day with two other fellows, and I stood there and told them I was chaplain, and I was in court with them, and so Brother Clymer said, "Well, I don't know what they're doing at Lifeline, but I know it's something good, and I'm going to parole you boys to Lifeline." And he looked over at me and said, "Are you going to take them out there?" I hadn't made no plans to, but I said, "Yeah, I'll take them right now." But Lifeline has a real good record with the courts, and the courts honor our program, and most everybody does honor our program. And so it's really exciting to be able to go into the jails and the prisons and to teach it. And it's just real rewarding. And you find people like Kevin, and this is the reward that I get, is that people like Kevin, months later, even years later, come. Now, I was feeling real down, depressed here a while back, as if God wasn't really working in the program. And I thought, well, maybe I should get out for a while. And about that time, the phone rang, and it was a black brother, and he said, "I want you to know that I'm working, the wife's working, and we're attending church all the time, and we're doing well." And I had no more than hang the phone up, and another guy called me and said, "I want you to know that I'm doing well." So, we just sow the seed, and somebody waters it, and God gives the increase. But sometimes when we get kind of discouraged in this ministry, God always sends somebody to say, "Hey, back here, you helped me. Back here, you picked me up." And that's really the reward that I get out of it, is being able to reach down and pick them up. And above all, I like to stay with them if I can, and I like to help them. And what happens, I have a ministry of people giving me furniture, and I pick up furniture and I give it to poor people. Well, if these guys get out of Lifeline and they don't want to go back to Fulton where their drug people are at, they got a job at James Marine. If they want to work here, I furnish their apartment for them.
Beautiful.
So God allows me to stay with them, and that way I'm with them, I get to minister to them, and I build relationship with them. So God doesn't only allow me just to go in and witness with them, but I thank God for the relationship that He gives me in the follow-up.
There was a film that came out that, about a woman that was released from prison that I caught several years ago, and it really heightened my awareness of the great need for people upon release to have support. That that return to jail or return to prison is so often connected to a lack of support. So that's a beautiful thing, that God is enabling you to stay connected. Because that's probably, if we're not aware of the needs of folks who are incarcerated, we're also not aware of the needs of the folks who have recently been released. Both of those are kind of invisible worlds to most.
I can really relate to the first part of the song, Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound, saved a wretch like me. And it did.
Amen.
But when you're saved, you're not a wretch anymore. So that's
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I have a couple questions. If someone is viewing today and is feeling kind of God starting to tug on their heart a little bit, and they would want to know more, who would they be in touch with, and so that they could kind of explore this a little bit?
They can call Lifeline Ministries. The phone number is 443-4743, and just state their situation, and we'll follow up on it. I'll follow up on it. I'm chaplain out there, so I'll follow up on it.
And if someone was feeling a desire, maybe not to explore the opportunity to minister, but was feeling called to provide financial support, you wouldn't turn that away, I don't think.
No,
how are you supported?
We're supported by God's people, the churches and people. Each month there's a list comes out, Charlie Baker $200, Kevin $25, and you $200, and that's the way it goes. When we didn't get any federal, state, or United Way funds, we started praying, and God says, well, this is my work. And so he says, I'm able to support my work. So we just decided we just go. And we've been going for 5 years. We started out with a budget of probably $160 the first year with just a few people. This year the budget's about $375,000. So now we're handling, instead of having 3 people, we're handling up to 50 and 60. We've kind of had to cut back because we don't have facilitators and teachers to really come in and take over it. But we're handling about 50 people now. And so, but God meets our needs according to his riches and glory, and Haggai 2:8 says he owns all the silver and the gold. And I used to have a friend that says, yes, he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, and he owns the hills too, but he only gives me a hamburger at a time.
That's good. So, I'm thinking that your needs might fall in the area of folks who are interested in ministry, or folks who could help support. But are there other ways for people to be supportive of Lifeline and this important ministry to those in jail?
Well,
and prison?
Of course, we have a board. A lot of these gentlemen are businessmen. And they really, I've been on the board. That's how I got involved with the Lifeline. The director's wife had cancer at 39 years old, and we were building a bunkhouse. And I was going to the halfway house doing Bible studies down there, and he said, well, I've got to shut the job down. I said, no, don't do that. I'm retired. I'll just stop everything I'm doing, and I'll pick the men up and bring them out and continue the work while you're gone. And I've been working there for the last 5 years, but a lot of the men on the board are businessmen, and they give their time, they give their money, and we have women on the board that work at Comcast and various jobs, and they give of their time, and so it's a God thing, and we have ladies living free, and that's the same as Lifeline. It's under Lifeline Ministries, is Lifeline Ministries. And we have about 15, 18 women over there. And so we have women on the board, and they're business and professional women too. And there's just so many ways, that you can support by just being there and helping us run the thing, because a lot of us are not really business people, and I don't know how to run a business. I got a $375,000 budget, but God puts the people in the spots. So it's those people that come in that really is the backbone of the operation.
Well, and certainly, even without leaving your home or picking up the phone, our viewers can keep this ministry in their prayers. And
oh yes, very definitely.
Jesus reminds us in the 25th chapter of Matthew to really turn our attention to the people who are overlooked and underserved and out of sight, and certainly, the evidence is there. The blessing that you're receiving from this ministry speaks to how important that is to God. Well, we have just a few minutes left, and the time always flies. Kevin, I want to be sure to check in with you before we close. Is there anything that you would want to be sure our viewers knew that we haven't touched on yet? Is there?
I want the viewers to know that Paducah Lifeline Ministries is there if you need them, and they're also there if you'd like to help make a donation. Paducah Lifeline Ministries is a hands hand-in-hand experience for the people that are between jail and home.
Amen.
It's a transition period, and it's a period of time in people's lives that is just often overlooked. And Paducah Lifeline Ministries is a God experience for those in that transition period. And speaking from experience, it's really made a big difference in my life.
Yeah.
And it's making a difference in a lot of people's lives, and I wish for them to continue, to do that. That's why I'm going to offer, all the support I can.
Yeah. 60-second summary for you,
60
Charlie?
seconds. Well, I have the privilege of going and sharing with about 25 inmates. I'm leaving Paducah about 11:45 to go to Marshall County. And I'm blessed. I got to share with about 28 this morning. I'm going to get to share with 25 more up there today. So I just covet the prayers of people that I'll be able to continue this race that I'm in. I just keep running. I'm 81 years young, and I've been retired about 16 years, and I run 9 and 10 hours a day, and I got up at 3 o'clock this morning. And so I stay busy, and I need God's strength. So I just pray that people will
I think
pray
God
for
gave
me.
you good health for a very, very good reason. Yeah. Well, it's been so wonderful to have both of you and to share and to really open the eyes and the ears and the hearts of our viewers. So, Kevin Wissing, thank you, and thank you also for sharing what's a vulnerable part of your own life, and for trusting our viewers with that. And Charlie Baker, thank you. Thank you, and for your 20-some years of ministry to Christ's beloved, who are behind bars or recently released. Bless you, and bless Lifeline for the important ministry that happens that is probably unseen and unappreciated by many. I just want to thank you, our viewers, for tuning in today, and invite you to let God speak to you about what you've learned today, and also to invite you with Paducah Cooperative Ministry, which is the sponsor of this program, to do whatever you can to join Paducah Cooperative Ministry in doing God's work with our human hands. Thank you for joining us today. Shalom. In mission.